Hi, this is Bill Hitchcock. It is Friday, January 12th, 2024 when I'm recording this. Just trying to give you some ideas about how you might approach the first homework assignment in Band 210. This is the one for doing some expense collection and trying out a few different things. So anyways, I'm just going to scroll down and get down to our first week of classes. There's the Excel Basics MPG that we worked on just the other time. And then finally, here's the Excel Basics expense budget versus actual spreadsheet. So I'm going to click on that. Open it up once it downloads. Hopefully that did. I want to enable editing on this file. And as we did before, I'm going to save this onto my computer just to make sure that if I have to start all over, I can go from there. So I'm going to click on File, Save As, go to Browse, and then pick my C drive. Remember, it's under this PC if you can't find it. So choose your C drive, go to your courses folder that we set up, and then your Band 210 Essentials folder. Put it in there. I've got to dump mine into the Spring, and I'll just leave it actually right there in that main area. So I'm going to rename this one Excel 01 expenses. I'll just include my initials on it just so I can kind of remember when I did this, and that should be good. So like we had done before on all the documentation sheets, we want to update a few things. So I'm going to put my name right on this. The date completed. Let's see, it looks like I must have set this up back in 2023. So let's put in today's date. And as soon as I hit enter, you'll notice that it displays it in long date format. The age and days are going to change to 0 because today's date is Friday, January 12th. And sure enough, that's what happened. So the purpose of the spreadsheet, demonstrate our understanding of Excel techniques, including entering some data into cells, formatting cells, using some functions. In particular, this is something I didn't cover in class, but we'll take a look at something called a VLOOKUP. So I'll put in e.g. VLOOKUP if we can figure that one out. And then just make an application focused on tracking my expenses. So we update this a little bit. All right, that looks pretty good. The other thing that right off the bat, I just want to be done with this. And I'll double check it at the very end as well, but I'm going to quick select all my sheets. So I right click on the Documents tab, choose Select All Sheets. I'm going to go to Page Layout, go to Print Titles, check the header and footer. And if this isn't set up on a spreadsheet, you'll have to go in there and do it. For the most part, we've got this working right. So I'm going to go to Custom Header. I want to change where it says put my name here. I'll type in my name. So you go ahead, type in yours. The course is Band 210 Essentials to Analytics. It's not the summer of 2023. This is spring of 24. And then we've got our date printed, all of that. That's the same. I'll check the custom footer. It's got the file name in it. Page 1 of 5 pages, if that's what it is. And then the sheet, it'll display the sheet tab that I have down on the bottom of all these. So that looks pretty good. I'm not going to bother hitting print preview at this point, but I think we've got our headers and everything all that set up pretty well correctly. So now, before I start doing anything else, I got to make sure I remember to ungroup the sheets. So right click on any one of these sheets, choose ungroup, and there you can see that they're ungrouped and so on. All right, here are some instructions. If you want to follow these instructions, great. You can do that. You might notice right off the bat that I've got 2 page breaks on here. There's kind of a thin line. Here, let me zoom in a little bit on this. There's kind of a dotted line where you can see a page break there. It's probably just because of the orientation. So I'm going to change the orientation on this sheet to landscape, and that looks a little bit better. So we've got that. Then I've got this sample sheet, and then finally a periods per year table. We'll talk about using that one a little bit later, but I want to focus on the sample. And like I say, I like to just kind of play with things first and don't worry so much about the instructions. I just kind of want to figure out what is it that I would be doing on a spreadsheet such as this. So I'm going to resave my file since I did make the changes to the headers. And I want to do some of those things that we had done before. So for example, one of the first things, it looks like I've got a set of records here. So I've got, each one of these rows is a record. Then notice that there is a blank line at the very bottom. All right, that we always want to do that. And then up at the top, I've got my field names. So, that's a standard way of setting up a spreadsheet. So the first thing I'm going to do is I want to insert a new column here. And we can just call it the num or the sequence or the count or something like that. And basically, it's a record count. I want to keep track of these records that I typed in the original order. There might have been some reason why we entered them in this order in the first place. So that's what we're doing here. So I've got 1, 2, 3 typed in. I can double click on the fill handle. So it does all that. And the other is I'm going to format this. So I go to my home tab, go to the comma style, and decrease the decimal. Next, I'm going to format all my field names. So I'm going to highlight all those. All I did is I clicked on cell A1, hold my shift key, and just start cursing over to the right with my arrow keys. It's okay if you go a little bit past it. That way, in case you add some more columns into here, we can do that. So the standard that we use for formatting our field names, we boldface them. And again, this is on the home tab. So look in that ribbon. It's in the font group. We boldface it, come over to alignment, look for center, and then finally wrap text. Other ways that you can do that is if you right click and choose format cells, you can get to a lot of these different settings by formatting the cells that way. So just for some ideas. All right, that looks pretty good. It looks as though if I zoom in on here, again, here's my page break. So, I don't want to get too worried about this at this point. We can see what happens if we narrow up some of these columns and see if it'll fit a little bit better after doing that. Let's just try going ahead. Let's change the orientational landscape. And that should work. All right. I like to be able to sort my data. So what I'll do is if I hit Control and Home, takes me back to cell A1. I want to go down to the cell right underneath the field names, click on the View tab, come over here into the View group and choose Freeze Panes. And I'm going to freeze this top row, and if there was any columns to the left, it would freeze any columns to the left there as well. So that way, if I've got hundreds of expenses, you can still see those field names up at the top. So when I hit Control Home, notice it goes to cell A2. That's where I had set the freeze panes on it. All right, I'm going to widen out a couple of these columns here just to see how this looks. The category, we've got expenses, we've got some budget. So the budget numbers, I'm assuming are probably dollars. So let's highlight these. Format them with the dollar format. Probably don't need to carry this out to the cents. So I'll decrease the decimals on that one. Main reason remember, a budget is just kind of an overall, it's a goal. It's not like we're too worried about the exact pennies at this point. All right, so in my budget, I've got a rent expense of $1,500 and that's per month. Electric is 75 bucks a month and so on. You know, here we've got groceries at $105 a week. Restaurants, if I go out and spend 60 bucks a week, et cetera, we've got this. So that actually works pretty well. Let's save this. And let's see what else we've got. So I want to be able to compare my budget and find out how much is this on a yearly basis. And that way I can do some calculations and find out on a percentage basis how much of my total budget is spent on rent, how much is electrics, and so on. The problem is, right now I can't compare it very well because I've got some of these listed as monthly, but here's groceries, which is a weekly item. And, you know, so therefore it's like, well, I'm really looking at about $420 a month if I take 4 weeks per month, you know, and we could do things like that. So in order to do the comparison, I need to figure out how many periods I have per year. So let's take this data and let's sort this by whatever this is. All right. So like car insurance, for example, there's 2 halves. Every 6 months, I have to pay $600. So I'll put in 2 periods per year. Therefore, the annual amount is going to equal my 600 times the 2 periods per year. So I paid $1,200 per year just for car insurance. For rent, there's 12 months per year. So I'll copy that from here for my different months. And then finally for the weeks, let's go with just 52. I realize that it's a leap year. There's 53 weeks this year, but let's just go with 52 and we could plug that in that way. So now that I've got all my periods per year, I can copy this formula down and there's all my yearly amounts. So let's watch that in slow motion. I had the formula, it was equal. I point to the $600 budget, type in an asterisk, which is above my number 8, point to the periods per year, F2. So D2 times F2. And again, you can type that in. It's just pointing method. That way you're sure you're using the correct cells. Hit enter, I get $1,200. Then if I want to copy this, I can either double click on the fill handle, that's that little black box in the corner, or I can hit Control C to copy, hold my Shift key, cursor down to select what cells, and then hit enter to paste it. And in fact, if you look down here, it says select the destination, press enter. That's what I'm doing. Hit enter, and I've got my results. Or what I had done before, I'm going to undo this one last time. I'm going to click on this cell. I'll just double click right here on the fill handle and notice it copies it down. All right, that looks good. Let's do this. Let's get the total, the minimum, and the maximum. So I'm going to save this. To get the total, use the sum formula. So all of our formulas start with an equal sign. So waiting for me to enter in the formula. I'm in enter mode. So I type in the word sum. Up left parenthesis. I'm going to point to the cells that I want to sum up. So I'm going to go all the way up to the top for the annual amount. I'm going to hold my Shift key and either just click down here at the bottom, or I could just use my arrow keys and work my way down to the bottom. So I'm summing up everything, including the field name, which it's text that has a value of 0. It won't be a problem. The blank cell down here, the reason I do that is if I insert some more expenses, it will automatically adjust this range of cells. So I've got everything from G1 to G10, and then I can just hit enter, and my total expenses for the year are almost $38,000. My minimum expenses, it's equal, MIN, parenthesis. I can click on the annual amount. I'll hold my Shift key, click on the blank cell. It's everything between G1 and G10. Hit enter. So there's $900. And my biggest expense, max, and let's take the annual amount all the way down here. So again, G1 to G10. Those didn't get formatted. So let's click on one of the cells that is formatted. I'm going to choose the format painter. This is again on my home tab. And I'll highlight those two cells. So let's test this out, do some sorting. I'm just going to sort this. So under the home tab, off to the right, there's sort. And we can sort the smallest to largest. There is my smallest expense, the electric. And my biggest expense is my housing, $18,000. And notice that the numbers are all out of order. So let's just resort it back in the original order. And you'll notice that the totals and the min and max, they don't change at all. That looks good. All right, that looks pretty good. Let's save this. For the per quarter, let's just take our annual amount, divide it by 4. 4 quarters per year, copy this down. We've got that. Per month equals the annual amount divided by 12 months per year. And copy that down. Check, for those monthly items, they should match. Remember we had $1,500 per month, and that's what's showing up here. Here's 75. That looks like that's working. And then per week, we'll do our annual amount divided by 52. We can copy that down. Notice it automatically formatted it for me, so it's kind of nice. I probably for the per week, you can decide if you want to show the decimal points, the pennies or not. I might adjust it after a bit. And finally, per day, we're going to do the annual amount divided by 365 days. Just to give myself kind of an idea, it's like, hey, for almost $50 a day, that's my rent expense. Electric is costing me about $2.50, and so on. Groceries is about $15 a day. So if you got paid daily, it might give you an idea about how much you'd need per day to make sure that works. So let's copy this, our summary statistics. So the total, the min, and the max. I'm going to highlight those cells, hit Control-C to copy them, and cursor over to the right by holding my Shift key, hit enter, and I've got all those totals. So weekly numbers, we can decide, do we want to show those? How about if we show them with a dollar format? And let's get rid of the decimal points. Yeah, just get rid of the decimals. So at least that way we have some idea. It's like, hey, it's roughly $17 per week for electric. We could see that. The per day, those I think I will leave the pennies on. So we've got that on there. So my grand total, I better be making over $100 a day. In fact, I better make over $103.18 a day. Otherwise, I won't be able to afford all my expenses and that. So this looks pretty good, right? Let's save this. Let's go to the instructions and see what I've got. We've got start the sample sheet with the field names. Yes, we did that one. All right, we said something about VLOOKUP formulas. We didn't do that. Compute the rest of the fields. Yes, we did do that. Format the numbers. We said something about mileage. It's not mileage, it's expenses, but we could probably update that. We got the sum for the totals. Let's see. Formatting the data. I don't think I did size, excuse me, size 9 font yet. So we should maybe go back and do size 9 font. So we'll highlight all this. Let's change the font size to 9. And when I do that, I can probably also adjust my column widths. See how that's starting to look. Not bad. I think I'll take all of these amounts and give them the same width. So if I highlight all those columns, I'm just going to click and drag, make those the same width that way. That looks pretty good. Let's try change it on page layout, see if we can put this back in portrait mode. And it looks like it's just going to fit. So I think I'm going to leave this in landscape, because what I want to do is I want to add an extra formula in here. So I'll leave the space there. So my formatting, that one's done. I got my sequence field. I called it number this time, so we'll say that that one's done. Let's see. Format painter, yeah, we've got that done. We typed in the 1, 2, 3. We adjusted the column widths. Copy the sample sheet. I guess I didn't do that one, so before I do that, I want to do a couple more things on the sample sheet. Let's see, change the data to better reflect my own budget. We'll do that once we copy it. Let's add some more expenses. Yeah, we can do that. We tested out some sorting. Let's do that, because I showed you how to just sort by one field. So if you want to sort by multiple fields, sort is under both the home and it's also under the data. So I'm going to go to data this time. And there's my sorting. I can choose either A to Z, Z to A, or I can do a custom sort. So I'm going to choose custom sort. I want to sort this by the categories. And within the categories, by the expense. And we'll try okay. So here's how much I'm spending on food. Here's what I have for the housing expenses. You can see that. So just gives us a different way of sorting that information. All right, back here to the instructions. So let's see, we tested that one out. Insert a pivot table. No, we're not going to do that yet. We'll wait for the pivot tables. The documentation sheet, yes, I did do that. Ungroup the sheets, yeah, I did do that. Make any final adjustments, we'll hold off on that one. So I've got actually most of my stuff done. Got 60% of it done on these tasks. So that looks pretty good. Save this work. Let's come back to the sample and add something else. All right, one of the things I want to do is I want to just find out what is each one of these expenses, how much is that on a percent of my total expenses? So let's put in another field here, and we'll say percent of total. So to get the percent of total, it's going to be the annual amount divided by the grand total of the expenses. Now, I'm going to want to always take every single amount, but divide it by this grand total. So I hit function F4 once, which this would work because it's just going to always lock in G and 11, but I really don't need that in front of the G because it's only the row 11 that I need to lock in place. So I'll hit function F4 twice. That's what I need. Hit enter. Gives me a decimal point. I'm going to go to home. I'll go to the percent format and copy this down. So my groceries are 14% of my total budget. Rent, you can see it's almost half of my entire budget. So let's narrow up that column if we can. Let me see if I can come over here, narrow this up. In fact, I could probably even make it a little bit smaller than that. That looks pretty good. And I can read all this. So, the min, max, and totals actually will work. So I'm going to copy this over. I just want to format them with a percent format. So you can see my grand totals should add up to 100%. It does. And my maximum one is the 48%. So that all looks pretty good. All right, let's save this. We said we want to make a copy of it. So I'm going to right click on it, move or copy the sheet, put it right after the, well, wait, before I do, one last thing. All right, I've got this periods per year. And what I'd like to be able to do is rather than having to enter in that number, and I'm going to format these just with the comma format. If groceries was, say I want to spend $500 per month, I want that to automatically update. So it lists it as 12 months per year. So here's how we can do it. We can say equals VLOOKUP. If I can type today. All right, let me try this again once. All right, equals VLOOKUP. VLOOKUP means vertical lookup. It's going to look up this value, the month, in a table. So I'll type in a comma. My table is on this periods per year table. So I click on that cell. I click on day and all of those items that I have in my table. And this is something that we set up. I had it set up for you. You could have done this. So it's going to look through this table and say, is it the day? If it is, returns 365. Is it week? 52, month, 12, and so on. So in this case, it is equal to month. It's going to find that, return the number 12. So that's my table array. Type in a comma. The column index, which table or which column of this table do you want to return? Do you want to return the first column or the second column? I want to return the second column, so I'll type in a 2 there. Type in one more comma, and then it says, does this original item, E2, the word month, does that approximately match one of these, or does it exactly match? Well, in our case, we want it to exactly match, so I'll put in false. Type in a parenthesis, hit enter, and I've got 12. So if I copy this down, I get garbage. The reason I'm getting garbage is if I look at my formula, the E2 is okay. This part where it says periods per year table, that's what we call a 3D reference. It's referencing the contents of this sheet, so that's okay. But the A2, when I copied that down, became A3. The B7 became B8. That's not right. So I've got to put in a $sign here and a $sign here to lock in those two rows. So it's always going to be row 2. It's always going to be row 7. The number 2, that's fine. That was the second column. The word false, that's not going to change. That would be fine. So I hit enter after I alter my formula, recopy this down, and everything's working again. So now if I go back, change my groceries to week, it's 52 weeks, but I've got to change my budget back to 105, and we've got that in. So that's the VLOOKUP formula. That's what we had to do here. All right. Other things that we could do with this. We said we got to make a copy of this sheet. So I'm going to right click. I'm going to move or copy. Put it before the periods per year table, after the sample. Hit OK. Rename it. Call it my budget. And then I can start updating some things. So for my restaurants. I never go out for a restaurant, so I'll just say it's only I don't know. What would I want to say? If I go out once a month, that's probably a lot. So per week, let's just say that it's 30 bucks. I guess I can make it a month. We'll make it $75 per month. For my groceries, I'll just say I spend $150 a week. For my electric, it's about $100 per month. My heat, that's probably about right. My housing, we'll just say that it's only $800 per month. My car insurance, I don't know, we'll say it's $500. My car payment, we'll say it's $650. And my gas is $50 a week. And I've updated this a little bit. So my total expenses are $32,000, mainly because I really cut back on my rent. If I want to add some more expenses, I'm going to right click here, do an insert. I'm going to copy one of these expenses, change this number to number 9. I'm going to create a new category called Other. My expense is my Loris donation. And I'll say that I give 2,000, no, let's make it $1,200 per year. And we can put in something like that. So if I did $100 a month back to the college, we can do that. All right, let's put this in. Let's hit Control Home. That looks pretty good. Let's save it. Go back to instructions. So I got my sample sheet copied. Yes, I did that. Enter in some of our own data. Yes, so we did that. We inserted another row. Yes, we did that. I haven't done the pivot table and I haven't done the final adjustments. I've got 80% of my homework done, not half bad. So finally, I'll show you how to do a quick pivot table. If we go to my budget and come up here to insert, choose pivot table, it highlights all of my data. Hit OK. I'm going to rename this sheet. Let's call it something like pivot summary. And I want to find out let's do the annual amount. I'll format that. We can highlight all this, shrink the font size down a bit. And now I want to see, how does this look if I categorize it? So there's my grand totals, almost $9,000 a year on food. Housing is 12, other 1,200. Transportation is, almost as much as my housing, for a grand total of 33,600. If you want to sort this, just click in that column, either on the Home tab. We can sort from largest to smallest, or we can sort this back alphabetically and see how that looks. All right, other things that I could do is I'm going to come up here to the pivot table, and I want to add a pivot chart. And in this case, let's do a pie chart. That'll be all right. Doesn't look half bad. Let me see if I can get here to formatting. Let's see, design. Let's try the second design here. So it puts in percentages. Probably don't want it smack dab right in the middle of my other table. But that's not too bad. Probably don't need the word total here, so I can delete that and clean up my spreadsheet. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna sort this back in descending order. Because normally on pie charts, we always want to have the biggest piece of the pie at the top. So there we go. We could see there's my housing. Housing and transportation make up almost 3/4 of all of my expenses. So that looks good. All right. So here's what I have to do. Because I added another sheet, I've got to make sure that this one has the headers and footers as well. So I'm going to go back to sample. I'm going to hold my shift key and click on pivot summary. Go to page layout, go to print titles, choose header and footer, try print preview. There's my first page. Here's my second page. That looks pretty good. And then I can just click outside of any one of these sheets and it ungroups those two sheets. So that looks pretty good. All right. I did the pivot table. We did the pivot table. We formatted it. We added a chart. And finally, I made my final adjustments. It looks like I've completed all 20 steps and life is good. So I come back here to the documentation sheet, just double check this, make sure everything's looking good there. Yeah, let's save my work. So that's it. Hope it helps. Give it a try, see what you can do. If you get everything to work, great. If you come close, that's good too. And enjoy. So let me stop this and stop recording.